You have covered this company for years. What does this actually mean?
Well, I think it means that that Apple has become really the fabric of our lives. I think it's just testimony to that this is something that we don't even think about how much we rely on Apple's devices, and that means that I think that's one piece of it. I think it also means that the company is so big right now, it has an unfair advantage over a lot of other companies, just given its market cap, the stock that it has. If they ever did want to acquire companies, they've got more leverage on that. And last is, I think it is a wonderful reminder to people to stick to doing one or two things exceptionally well. In Apple's case, it's always really been one thing exceptionally well. And Tim Cook got a lot of heat over the years for not going down in the phone, coming out with a cheaper phone in a mass market. And he got distracted or criticism for not doing M&A, but he stuck to what he believed in. And I think that was kind of the third piece that I take away from hitting this milestone.
I do have this chart here in my GTV library showing Apple at the top, but trailed by Amazon, Alphabet, Microsoft, all in a sort of a pack, rising behind Apple. You know, Mark, you also make the point in your story that Tim Cook has had a lot of successes, even though he's also caught a lot of flack for not being Steve Jobs.
Right, and this is no accident. If you remember when Tim Cook took over as CEO back in the fall of 2011, there was so much talk. Is he going to be able to steer the company to new heights? Is he going to be able to do more than stabilize it? And at the same time, there was a lot of talk, is he going to let this company go? Is it going to become like the company it became under John Sculley and under past CEOs who replaced Steve Jobs originally? And the answer was a resounding no. This is at a market cap that's 3x what it was when Steve Jobs passed away. And that's just a number, but the number is still representative of this historical marker that represents so many new products over the years, smaller products, the Apple Watch, etc.
Now, you point out in your story that Apple isn't the first company to hit $1 trillion market cap. In fact, it was PetroChina, which quickly fell as oil prices fell. Caroline, you've been digging into some of the other historical markers here, and having the highest market cap isn't necessarily a recipe for success.
It's certainly not. Just cast your mind back to Microsoft, a key tech player that back in '99 hit that $500 billion mark, the $500 million. And, well, it then had 4 successive years of downward trajectory. It languished at then the number 300 almost in terms of market capitalization. It doesn't always spell that this is going to be a winning streak for the company. You mentioned PetroChina. Well, because oil prices crashed, it swiftly fell off its perch as well. So I think it doesn't always spell glory, but I think what's going to be taken into account when it comes to Apple is not only is it ahead of the pack when it comes to the other in excess of $500 billion value companies. So it's about $100 billion worth more valuable than Amazon. It's well ahead of Microsoft and the like, and Alphabet. But also its price to earnings is still pretty darn reasonable. It's the lowest of those 4 killer tech companies. It trades at about 18 times future earnings. When you compare that to Amazon that's nipping at its heels, it trades at more than 100 times future earnings. This is a company that's already raking in $250 billion in terms of revenue every single year. It makes money. No wonder its valuation is so high.
Gene, what are the risks for Apple here? Is there any risk that Apple does hit this mark and then fall back down, given all the challenges ahead, even though it is still relatively cheap compared to its tech peers?
So there's no immediate risk, and that always concerns me when I can't identify an immediate term risk, but I don't see any immediate term over the next 1 to 2 years. There probably over the next 5 to 10 years is going to be the emergence of wearables, and this idea that it's an augmented reality first. It's something that Apple believes strongly in, but that's going to be a shift in terms of the devices that people are going to use. And so the good news for investors is we have a clean sailing ahead for the next several years, but the risk is kind of down the road relative to what can happen when we have the next hardware shift. And would remind people that's one thing that Apple has done brilliantly well, is this idea of embracing the innovator's dilemma. And what that means is when they've had successful products, 2005, the iPod was just over 50% of revenue. They were very aggressive at creating a new product to cannibalize that with the iPhone in this case. In the future, Apple's going to have to cannibalize the iPhone, and that is going to present some sort of a risk to the story.
Well, Mark, wearables were up 60% in the last quarter in terms of revenue, but is it going to be the Apple Watch or AirPods that cannibalize the iPhone? Probably not.
That's absolutely right. And to your point, no, it's not going to be the AirPods or the Apple Watch. It's going to be another product that, as Gene alluded to, that's going to be augmented reality glasses. That is Apple's next big thing.
How big can that be?
Yeah, and we declared that as Apple's next big thing about 2 years ago. And this is really what Tim Cook is banking the future of the company on, to some respect, in terms of hardware. The company has well over 1,000 engineers working on this right now. They're working on an augmented reality headset that is designed to eventually succeed the iPhone. It will take some of the, the heat away from the Apple Watch not doing as well as some may have expected earlier on. This is their next big product.
Gene, are you as optimistic about AR as Mark is here?
Yeah, Mark's done a wonderful job of covering the topic, and I wholeheartedly agree that this is kind of the next thing in terms of the mobile device, but it's going to be a long time away. I'm very optimistic about Apple's business over the next several years. I just want to emphasize that piece, because their hardware business, the iPhone business, is operating almost like a services business. But kind of putting it all together and answering your question, Emily, is that I share Mark's optimism about the future impact that augmented reality will have on consumers.